I mean, I got it on TV here. I'm soaking it up. I'm watching. I know some people on the field. I'll put it that way, and it is something to see. It is something to see. Chiefs fans, I got a lot of respect for that program. Excuse me, my voice is shot. You can tell the beads where I've been all week. Got home 10 p.m. last night. Probably slept a combined 12 hours in New Orleans, and got to watch the game on my couch with my kids. And, they're big Birds fans. Don't get it twisted. I'm happy for my guys, but I'll try to keep this breakdown as professional as possible because I know there's all types of fans watching this, not just Eagles fans. So, Chiefs, a lot of respect for that program. A lot of respect for Patrick Mahomes. A lot of respect for Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, all those guys. They earned it. Being a part of 2 Super Bowl teams before, it is the most exhausting thing in the world in a vacuum to go through one of those seasons. To imagine going through 3 now on the heels of being deep in the postseason for all these years. What an incredible journey for that team. And football is cruel. I know a lot of people think there's a script. This is not how you end that movie, but the movie's over. Now, that shot to Worthy at the end of the game, although it's garbage time, reminds you that it's not over for Mahomes. It's not over for the Chiefs, but Chiefs free agents next year: Trey Smith, Nick Bolton, D-Hop, Justin Reed, Omenahu, Hollywood Brown, Wharton, Nadi, Justin Watson, Juju, P. Ryan, Kareem Hunt, Mecole Hardman, Mike Caliendo, Najee Johnson. So, listen, they'll be back in situations like this. That guy's amazing, but they ran into a fucking buzzsaw. That is the definition of running into a buzzsaw. And I'll just say this, as a member of the other Super Bowl team, and that feels so good to say, welcome to the fucking family. If you're on that team, I was driving to pick up barbecue before the game, which is now what I do on Super Bowl Sunday. And I said, let me turn on my Super Bowl pregame playlist that I had in 2016 with the Patriots and the one I had in 17. And I said, let me just let this thing ride. I listened to some of the songs I vividly remember listening to before the Super Bowl. And I don't listen to those playlists. When I work out, I don't listen. I keep them kind of frozen in time. And I go back to them every once in a while. And I got chills listening to that playlist today because it brought me back to a time and a place. And I cannot describe the magnitude of the way your life changes for the better or for the worse, I suppose, when you win or lose that game. And the gravity of the feeling of being on that bus over to that stadium and playing in front of the entire world. Football is one of the most difficult sports on the planet. I'm not going to do a ranking thing. It's one of the toughest sports to win a championship in. It's a marathon. Everything has to break right. And at the end of it, your life changes if you get to this game and you win it. And for these guys, man, I cannot wait to come back to Eagles games until I'm walking with a fucking cane and say things like, "What's up, champ?" to Saquon Barkley and people like that. And I cannot wait to talk to my friends, people like Lane Johnson, because when you leave the game, if you know somebody like that and you talk to them on a regular basis, you're reminded of how crazy that grind is. And when you're playing, it's just normal. But for something like watching Lane's career the last 7 years, watching Kelce go through what he went through, coming up short, the gravity of the situation, it's indescribable. And for these guys, their lives have changed forever. I said this a couple weeks ago when Bo and I got a chance, and I don't profess to be an important part of that team, but I did my job and Bo did his job, and we're back at the game along with guys like Brent Selleck and Nick Foles, who definitely did more than his share. And getting to go down in the locker room after that game and be treated the way we were treated, for the people with the yellow jackets at the stadium to say, hey, go wherever you want. It's like, and if Julio Jones catches that ball, whether you think he was going to be out of bounds or not in the divisional round, I got to pay my way to go to that game probably. And I'm not going to be down there after the NFC East or the NFC Championship in the locker room, cutting it up with the guys. It just changes your life forever, and everything has to break right. But today, there was no luck. There was no luck. This was not a lucky team. This team didn't need luck. You know, this was a boulder going down a big ass hill, just picking up momentum, and they got stronger as the playoffs went on. And man, I just can't put into. It's hard for me to put into perspective how good this football team is. That football team there, and it will change. The hardest part, as the Chiefs can tell you right now, is getting back on the horse and doing the same damn thing. And it will be challenging. And they'll have a decision to make. Do they want to be one of the best teams of our generation, or do they want to have a shot at a dynasty? Those outcomes will be decided by a million small decisions by 53 players next year and the year after that. But in this moment, I don't know that there's too many better teams since the year 2000 that won a Super Bowl. And I think it's as evidenced by the dominating fashion they won this game. I couldn't believe at the end of the first quarter, time possession is 12 minutes to 3. You know, at the end of the first half, time possession is 20 minutes to 10 minutes. They're 9 plays. Kansas City's run 9 plays, 2 minutes in the second quarter. There are guys crying on the sideline, and I'm not making light of that. They beat their ass so bad, and I don't know the context of the shot I saw, so maybe the guy's going through something, and I don't want to say, but just they totally defeated the Kansas City Chiefs today, like by halftime. They broke their will, you know, and they came out in the second half and said, hey, we don't even have to really run the ball. We might not even have to score that much. That was an unbelievable performance. MVP, I don't know who's going to win it. You could easily give it to Jalen, and I want to see Jalen get the MVP. But before the second half, I was wondering if it was going to be Vic Fangio, as good as Jalen played. Because, I mean, what that defense did, the way they made them look, it is reminiscent of that Tampa Bay Super Bowl where, of course, it was like 21-6 at the half. I went back and took a look. I think the Chiefs allowed 49 pressures in that game at a 55% clip. And I don't know that people hearing that are thinking, well, that can't be right, because that would mean they'd have to throw the ball circa, 93 times in a game. But it is, because what that means is that 2 dudes were pressuring Mahomes that day. Most of the time he was pressured, which speaks to how dominant Tampa Bay's front was. You had JPP, you had Barrett, you had Sue. I mean, that was a very decorated and dominant front. This entire defense, the secondary, the backers, and of course the front four, they didn't have to get fancy. This isn't a group that has a call sheet this long. This is a group that can keep it simple. And today, you always talk about beating an all-time quarterback. How do you do that? How did the Giants beat Tom Brady? It never looked like that. How did freaking Tampa beat Kansas City? How did the Eagles this year beat Kansas City? 4 guys. 4 guys. Line up and play. See if they can block us, and they couldn't. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is, and Kansas City got beat fair and square, so I'm not making excuses for Patrick Mahomes. This is how the team was built. But Joe Thuney did an admirable job of filling in at left tackle. It bought them some time. Eventually, the clock struck midnight on that whole thing. And a guy who might be a Hall of Famer is trying to do a job that he's not accustomed to doing in the biggest game, and he can't do it. And you got Caliendo at left guard, and you've got Juwan at right tackle. And I think as great as Andy Reid's been, as great as Patrick Mahomes have been, they really left the back door open, and the Eagles kicked it down. I don't know if this offensive line is worse than the offensive line that they trotted out there against Tampa because of some injuries and that sort of thing. But they never really have returned to that form. They've had a dominant interior at times, but having to kick Joe out to tackle really was it looked like a fix, but the situation that demanded it ended up sinking them, because that was an ass kicking. I mean, it was a total ass kicking. We stopped tracking the pressures at halftime, but I think they were, what do we have for pressure? 45% pressure rate. So it also puts into perspective how ugly that other Super Bowl was from a protection standpoint. But I just want to say this: Josh Sweat started the whole thing. It was kind of one of those things that as soon as the first guy threw a punch, it was a brawl. And Josh Sweat, at one point in this game, started the party, so to speak. And then next is Hunt, who got a ton of snaps today. Talented guy. And then on third down, Sweat with the pressure that changed the entire thing. At that point, it's 10-0, I believe. And Mahomes does a very uncharacteristic thing, throws a pick six in the Super Bowl. And I think for that reason, throws a pick six, period. You got the white guy thing in there. It's almost like seeing God. But I think you end up in that situation, Mahomes, as great as he is, I think it put him on tilt, and they weren't going to be able to dink and dunk due to the game script. I think in that situation, if they can tackle that ball, maybe the dam doesn't break as early as it does, and maybe Mahomes thinks we can chip away, because the key to this game was going to be death by 1,000 paper cuts. As Tom Brady pointed out, that's what Kansas City is willing to do. And we thought, in my mind, as good as the Eagles have been, in my mind, I thought it would be a little bit more competitive between the Eagles secondary and the Chiefs wide receivers. And that's a very young secondary. The safety play, experienced guys. C.J. Gardner-Johnson was huge for them this year. Guy who will play in the box, vocal leader, the whole thing. Super happy for him. Reed Blankenship, hell of a player, guy who's experienced. But to trot out guys like Cooper DeJean, early this season, make him a nickel, change the whole thing. Quinyon Mitchell, a guy who, when I went to training camp this year, one of the things I heard is he had a chance to transfer to one of these big schools for a bunch of money. And he didn't. He stayed. He stayed at where did he go to school? Toledo. He had a chance to go like Bama or something like that. And I thought to myself, like, that's the kind of guy I want to play with. Now, I wouldn't blame somebody for going to get the bag, but like, this guy's got conviction. He's a principled individual. And then he gets to camp and people say, oh, this guy can play. And then you watch kind of his demeanor through the year. I said earlier this year, at times he was like my favorite kind of corner, the one that you could just forget about. You just don't see him. How did he play? I don't know. Other guy was doing cardio. They took some people away with him this year. I just didn't know that they could be so competitive in this game early, even early on when they were trying to get the ball to Travis Kelce, when they were trying to do the things that have looked easy throughout the playoffs. The Eagles made that look hard. And when the game script got out of control, thanks to that D-line, it was like, all right, now we can really eat. And it was like a fucking party. It was like, that would have been like the best party I was ever invited to, getting to be a part of that party. That was incredible. And of course, we talk about the Chiefs guys up front. They just couldn't hold up. But I think a guy like Milton Williams played incredible. He's going to make himself a ton of money. Josh Sweat, incredible. Let's say this about Josh Sweat, because he also forced the Zach Bond pick, backed up. Mahomes got people at his legs. He's running through Tooney. We said pregame, somebody's got to run over Tooney. I remember seeing guys around the building or around New Orleans this week and being like, hey, I really would like it if you put Jalen Carter out at edge. You can really run these guys over. They didn't even need to do that. I kept hearing they liked the matchups, and those guys really fucking won. So, You pair a group like that with that secondary who can be absolutely dominant, and you can run your shit. And that's what they did. Unbelievable. Hats off. If it weren't for the way the quarterback played, and I don't know who got the MVP. I don't know if it's happened yet. I'm watching on mute. These guys are having the time of their lives. But Jalen Hurts was unbelievable. Yes, there were times this year and over the past couple years where he didn't look like the guy we saw in Kansas City or in that Super Bowl against Kansas City a couple years ago. But in a lot of ways, I was even more impressed with the way he played today because of that fact. You know, everybody knows we think back to that last Super Bowl and we say, hey, he was the best player on the field. Well, he was quarterbacking the best team on the field today, and he understood that it wasn't about coming out and making mistakes. It wasn't about taking big risks, although he threw some tight contested balls, some beautiful back shoulders, the shots, and he helped kick the door down. He took what they gave him, and he beat him with his legs, and he was a leader. He was that same guy he was all year. He really is a winner. And so congratulations to Jalen Hurts. I cannot believe I was worried about the guy at some point this season. It feels like he's just got this second gear in the biggest game. And the best compliment you can give somebody is that he is a winner. And that's the way I've heard him described, whether it's on the broadcast by Tom Brady, Eagles fans you talked to this week, you know, other players at the Super Bowl. The guy's a winner. And congratulations to him. I mean, for what he's been through from college to the ups and downs in the pros, you talk about, like, he's not a guy who would click for immediately. His rookie year, he didn't set the league on fire. It wasn't a Jaden Daniels thing. You had, you know, the last Super Bowl year where he's a borderline MVP, and then he had to climb the mountain again. And so he's talking right now. I don't hear what he's saying, but I loved his interview pregame with, I think it was, it might have been Aaron Andrews. And he just echoed the sentiment of, you know, I'm a team guy. I'm going to do whatever it takes to win. I don't need gaudy numbers. I don't need to throw the ball 40 times a game to stroke my ego. I don't need any of that stuff. And I'm paraphrasing. But he was true to form all season. You know, when we saw them in the locker room after the NFC Championship game, and I'll say it now, like, it was like a party in there. You know, when I first saw it, I was like, holy shit, this team's confident. But boy, should they have been. That dude, though, had his head down, was walking around focused, looked like they just won a preseason game. And, you know, shook his hand, and I said, hey, go finish it, you know. And what he said to me, actually, I'm not claiming to be his friend. I don't talk to Jalen a lot. I've run into him maybe 2-3 times in my life. He said, it's already been written. I'll never forget that. And what that is belief. It's resolve. And that's between the ears, which is the hardest thing as a football player. And so congratulations to Jalen Hurts. He's a part of Philadelphia history. And, you know, here's the thing. Chiefs came out and made a decision. We're not going to let Saquon Barkley beat him. How good is this team that at some point he's 2.6 a carry, you know, middle of this game or whenever I read that stat. And they're beating the brakes off these guys. Belt to ass, as they say. And, you know, Kansas City made the decision. Hey, we're going to pack the middle of the field. We're going to make him throw outside the numbers. And boy, did he. And the thing I loved about his game early in this game, probably the most, was at points in the season, and Brady said it on the broadcast, I like when Jalen Hurts gets the ball out quickly. When you talk to people that know, they say, hey, he can be like a point guard. He might be even better in tempo. You know, just getting and tempo wasn't really an option, probably, as far as the game plan was concerned, because I think you come to this game and say, hey, low possession game, yada, 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 same old Chiefs game. They actually dictated the script, and it turned out they had a ton of possessions. But the thing I loved was early in this game, late in the down, he took care of the football, and he actually made plus plays. You know, even in situations like he checked down to Johnny Wilson at one point, and Wilson to like beat the ball up. He was just on target, and we said this. What are the best things he does? The quick stuff for sure, but the deep ball outside the numbers. And the Devontae Smith throw was incredible. But he's been one of the best outside the numbers deep ball throwers in the NFL. And I know the A.J. Brown ball came back. And at first we're like, oh, here we go again. America's like, yeah. And boy, am I glad. Jalen, 14 of 19 outside the numbers for 183 yards and a 99.2 rating. Thank you, Nolan. When you look at his passing chart today, it looks like a canyon, like a valley, which is, I mean, they said, I dare you. Spag said, I dare you. He said, okay, motherfucker. And he peppered him outside the numbers. So that was an unbelievable performance. He also tucked the ball and ran decisive, used his legs, looked fresh. That 2 weeks did him good. Obviously did the interior of that Eagles offensive line good. But you talk about the resolve of this team, as the game's getting ready to start and they go out for the coin toss and they're standing there face to face and they're doing that really nice tribute for the victims of the truck attack in the French Quarter, that extends the stare down at the middle of the field. And obviously during, a moment of silence, people aren't, ice grilling each other, talking shit, but you can believe as soon as that stopped, BG's mouth was moving again. And I'm watching him and he's talking shit to Mahomes. Now, I don't know what he's saying. And at first I'm like, oh, come on, B, don't. I'm like sitting at home. I'm like, maybe just leave him alone. Don't poke the bear. But it really didn't matter. And it felt like to me, once the game started, the resolve I'm speaking of is getting that fourth down taken away from you. Picture perfect ball, questionable call. Yeah, he touched his face, but it just felt a little ticky-tack. With everything people have been talking about, I think Party is like, damn, the most important part of this game is the beginning of the game. And we had it, and we drew up a big play. And, maybe most of the stadium knows on fourth down, if you man up against the Eagles, they're going to go outside the numbers and deep to A.J. Brown because it's fucking automatic. But they were able to rebound. At different points in this game. When he threw that pick, which could have been a really bad deal. I thought it was a really good pressure that Spags drew up. And, I think Juergens is probably the guy that cut the free runner loose. But at that point in my head, when you're up 7-0, going up 2 scores solidifies the script of the game, at least early for the Eagles. And I thought you got to kick a field goal here, if nothing else. Throwing that pick down low, luckily, it was a beautiful arm punt. It gave the Eagles defense a chance to continue on the right path. I would have loved to see them go up 10-0. Turned out didn't matter. And I think, you talk about adversity in this game, little moments where you might say, here we go, Chiefs. No, it just wasn't like that today. They're too good. They were too good. They stabilized. When Becton left for 10 minutes, stabilized. That's a big loss. Shout out to him for coming back. You talk about a guy like him, football can be a beautiful thing, man. And I'll tell you this, as a guy who played a lot of my career on bad teams, getting a chance to win a Super Bowl, it felt like a dream. It felt like it wasn't real. Like I woke up, the way Tom Brady talked about waking up in the morning, I'll never, and after losses and saying that was a nightmare. That's how I felt about winning. Waking up hungover in Minneapolis. I was up till 5 a.m, packing a dip with Rob Ninkovich in the hotel room. People think you're out like sparklers and maybe in cities besides like Minneapolis, but we were back in the room drinking beer. We couldn't believe it. We had to rewatch the game to believe it. It was, I had to pinch myself. I woke up in the morning and I said, did last night happen? So for a guy like Mekhi Becton, who's been in New York, which is football hell, written off the whole thing, came to Stoutland University, played guard, did a great job this year, crying at the end of the game. I got so much love for a person like that who's able to stick it out and deal with that bullshit. There's guys getting their first ring on this team. And on the other side of it, I think football can be really cruel. Like I heard the DeAndre Hopkins story before the game, and I don't want to butcher the details, but his dad had left a coat for him, and his dad passed away either right before he came into this world or around the same time. But suffice to say, he didn't know his dad, and his dad left a coat for him, and he said, "Hey, wear it at your wedding day or the Super Bowl, whichever comes first." And if football was karmic, if it was like, scripted out, I don't mean by shadowy figures at the NFL, I mean like if football were something that was preordained, the laws of nature, this team's been through a lot, this team three-peat, that'd be real cool. DeAndre Hopkins, that story was unbelievable, but his night ends in a really unspectacular fashion. I mean, he had a bad drop and it's touchdown late in the game. It looked like he just wanted to give the ball to the official, like, "Here, just take it." And he'll never be the same. Not saying he's broken, but I can guarantee you it's never going to be the same. And, for seeing a guy cry on the sideline in the third quarter means a lot to these guys. And shit, you talk about not being intimidated. We talk about this a lot this week, not fearing the logo on the helmet. Okay. And that's part of the reason I doubted this year that the Chiefs could, that the Chiefs were going to win the whole thing. Because it's not the same team that won the last two Super Bowls, and that's the hard thing. There were issues defensively that weren't there last year. As much as the offense was surging a little bit late in the season into the postseason when they got Brown back, they do have to beat you in a certain way. So listen, the Chiefs, unbelievable what they were able to accomplish. Unbelievable. But it's over, and you got to start over. You got to start over. Couldn't even get the ball to Kelsey, the whole thing. But the thing about the logo is a lot of times teams beat themselves before the game even starts because they put those guys up on a pedestal. And that's what you do in the media, and that's what you do externally, and you accept people saying, "Oh, it's hard to bet against Mahomes. It's hard to bet." He's one person. Brady's lost Super Bowls. Mahomes has lost Super Bowls. Mahomes had gotten beaten up in a Super Bowl before by Tampa. What's to say he's not? The same thing's not going to happen. That's the way you got to think. Why the fuck does it matter what happened last year? The only thing that matters is what happens on the field. And so if you allow the past to weigh heavily on the present, then you're already losing. And so when Mahomes walks in with a Kelly or Eagles green shirt on or Eagles green suit on, Travis Kelce walks in there. I've never seen somebody walk in so confident, and he should have been, right? Because that's what makes him great. I'm not taking shots at these guys. I have the utmost respect for him. When they walked in and I saw the video of like these sharp dressed dudes that look like they've been there a million times, like if you were faint of heart and you were an Eagle and you're watching Kelce walking with his Boogie Nights suit on, you're like, damn, this guy is that's Travis Kelce. This is game day Mahomes and Kelce. This team's been there a million times. It doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. What matters is what happens on the field, and they thoroughly kicked somebody's ass on the field today in front of the whole world. There was a guy that texted me, former Greenlight podcast, I'm going to give him best seat tomorrow. For those of you who like National Geographic, you need to look up Paul Nicolay. He's one of the best photographers in the world. He's one of the biggest badasses we ever had on this show, including football players. Guys like swam with narwhals, sat next to a polar bear and drank coffee. Well, probably not a polar bear. I think a grizzly bear. But suffice to say, if you've ever seen a picture of like a polar bear swimming or like, a fucking elephant seal, it was him. He texted me, "Hey, I'm watching this game in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with Starlink. Go Birds." He's like, "We're on an expedition." You think about every corner of the world, people are watching this game. And when you go play in it, you meet people from Italy, you meet people from China, you meet people from Australia, media day. People are asking you questions from different countries. It can be a dream or it can be a nightmare. And so the nightmare has begun for the Chiefs. it's going to be a long off season. We talked about the people that they're going to be having to make decisions on and whatnot. And so, hats off to everything they've done so far, but they have to kind of start over. The one thing is, as evidenced by that seed I saw when I was walking over here to do my live hit, the last thing I saw was that Mahomes worthy touchdown. And I was like, damn, yeah. I mean, the guy's still got it. But shout out to D-line, shout out to Jalen, shout out to the secondary, shout out to the offensive line for making things boring all year. You know, it's going to get lost in the shuffle. All 1,700 pounds of those guys, man, hats off to them. You know, when you don't talk about the offensive line in the game, it's a good thing. And, you know, they're going to go back to their lockers now. And, you know, people aren't going to be talking about Lane Johnson. They're not going to be talking about Mailata first. They're not going to be talking about Juergens, who had a back and went out there and battled. Dickerson, who couldn't fucking run 2 weeks ago. You know, Freddie, Steen, like all those depth guys coming in. They're not going to be talking about that. But over the course of this group's existence, and I'm talking about like the whatever links last Super Bowl to this one, it's been the offensive line. And I'm just so proud of those guys. Vic Fangio, he might not get the MVP, but damn, that's as close as a coach, because you're talking about playing Andy Reid and doing that. So unbelievable. World champions. It's another thing when you're a world champion and now we're stacking you up to some other teams. We'll do it tomorrow. I'll start talking about this team in relation to other great teams in recent history. They're up there. Hey, listen, we joked about this year. Could the question, I even feel funny asking it, because trust me, you know what my answer is going to be. Could this team could our team in 17 beat this team? No. I mean, they didn't think we could win any of those games, but I don't know about this team. Fuck. And boy, am I glad to be part of that big family. I mean, I know some people who aren't Eagles fans here, but it feels special to be a part of that family. Only there 2 years, but part of the family. And holy shit. Best commercial tonight, just a couple housekeeping items. I thought it was the Seal commercial. And of course, these fucking, what generation are y'all?
I would say that the 90s predated us.
Yeah. I'm sitting here watching with Nolan and Aiden, who sometimes I forget are a lot younger than me because I'm young at heart. But the Seal commercial comes on and they're just like, and I'm like, are you not floored right now at how they did the obvious and made it the most spectacular thing in the world? And they were like, what? I go, well, first they're kind of laughing at the commercial because I'm like, hey, isn't this funny? And they're like, hey. You're just like, it's a commercial with a seal. And I said, hey, do y'all know who Seal is? And they're like, So I had to explain the fact, like, who he was. Used to be with Heidi Klum. You know, Batman soundtrack, Kiss from a Rose. Like, and then to think that like half the national audience probably didn't know who Seal was, and they just did it anyways. That was incredible. I love that commercial. So yeah, I could go on and on about everybody on this team. I mean, just every person matters when you win a Super Bowl. Everybody on the team. At some point this year, whether you're Steen, whether you're Dotson, how about Dotson, bro? How about dudes that had a Dotson first touchdown? RIP. Holy shit. I stared daggers at that number before the game. It was like, and I ran out of time. Swear I would have bet it. I said it. I said to him, I go, Dotson. I go, hey, Dotson. Look at this, Dotson. And when he caught that ball, I was like, somebody's really happy right now. Can you imagine running in the front yard because you made 10 grand or something, like screaming at the top of your lungs, walking back in, and the whole Super Bowl party's looking at you like, you fucking dunce. But, you know, I will say this. Saquon didn't have a lot of yardage on the ground, but that blitz pickup was huge on that play right there, wasn't it? And, you know, Watson had a tough day, but Dotson winning in that situation, huge, just jumping out in front and kind of controlling the game. Let's see. Nothing much more to say. Jalen Carter didn't have a sack, but boy, was he disruptive. Did he not have a sack? I don't think he did. Ironically, the real dominant force on that group didn't actually get the number, right? That's why that number doesn't matter sometimes. He was getting held. He was getting, and boy, was that a beautiful sight for a lot of America who like absolutely can't stand the Chiefs. And I'm not one of those people. I respect the Chiefs. But people were I was getting texts left and right, like the Eagles D line is like the Beatles now. I mean, seriously, people love them. When Milton Williams had a strip sack and Jalen came through and finished, and yeah, it was a penalty, but that was a violent hit, and it kind of summed the day up. He couldn't even get back there and take a shot. So, and that was the dagger, man, up 37-6 in the fourth. They were trying to keep us in the game, watching the damn game. But again, at halftime, you knew it was over because they were like a boa constrictor in that first half. You couldn't get the ball back. You couldn't drop back and throw. You couldn't change the script. The only way the Chiefs were going to beat them was with long drives, and they never got to sustain them. So incredible. I'm just so happy for the guys. And I'm so happy that the season is over, quite frankly, because that was a marathon. And so tomorrow we're going to be live at 2:30 with all the fellas talking about New Orleans. By the way, it's a Clyde Simmons jersey. This is my old D-line coach in St. Louis. Love the guy. I'm looking at Lane right now. I'm so happy for him, man. So happy for that dude. Happy for all those dudes. Welcome to the family. I cannot wait to call everybody champ at every function for the next 40 years. I will not address anybody on this team as anything but champ. Respect to the Chiefs. Respect to Chiefs fans. And thank you very much if you're a Chiefs fan for listening to the show this year. And tomorrow might be painful. If you have it in you to listen, I'll try to make sure we're very respectful. But again, this team was unstoppable. This might have been an anybody could get it situation that nobody saw coming. All right, y'all. 2:30 tomorrow. We'll be live. Eagles, Super Bowl champs. Congratulations.